Xylitol. This sweetener is xylitol. So people often ask me, why is it deadly for dogs but not for humans? And for dogs, even a small tiny amount can be fatal, but for us humans, it works differently. And the research suggests that it can actually help protect our teeth. So let's break it down. Now, in dogs, xylitol causes the pancreas to release a surge of insulin, so the blood sugar drops quickly, and that can lead to weakness, seizures, liver failure, and even death. And that's why the vets are often strict about warning pet owners. But in humans, the response doesn't happen. This response doesn't happen. So the insulin doesn't get tricked the same way, so we don't see the crash. Instead, the effect of xylitol for us shows up in the mouth. And that's where the story begins, because the same compound that is poisonous to a dog in humans can create the perfect condition to reduce the risk of cavities. So, if xylitol doesn't crash our blood sugar the same way it does for dogs, what's actually happening in us? And the difference here shows up in the mouth. And to understand why that matters, we need to look at what actually happens every time you eat. So, as soon as you eat food, especially anything with sugar or refined carbs, the bacteria start to go to work. And what they do is they start fermenting those carbs and releasing acids. And the acid basically drops the pH levels in your mouth. And if the pH levels go below 5.5, that's when your enamel starts to lose minerals. And we call that process demineralization. And it's the very first step of a cavity forming. And most of this acid attack happens in the first 20-30 minutes after you eat. And that's what we call the danger window, which is the period where the enamel is at its most vulnerable. Now, here's the problem. If you snack throughout the day or sip drinks like soda, coffee with sugar, juice, the danger window keeps resetting. And the enamel can spend hours under stress, under acid stress. And even if you brush twice a day, that constant cycle makes decay more likely. So the real issue here isn't just about the sugar intake, it's about how long the mouth stays in that acidic state. And that's where xylitol has been studied for its potential role. Because while it's harmful for dogs when swallowed, in humans, the first effect seems to be local in the mouth, and that's how fast the pH recovers after an acid attack. So basically, it helps neutralize acids. Instead of the enamel being bathed in low pH for 20 to 30 minutes, the recovery time becomes much shorter. And by the way, what actually is xylitol? And this isn't some new chemical that scientists have just invented. Xylitol is what's called a sugar alcohol. It's a type of carbohydrate that looks and tastes like sugar, but behaves differently in the body. And small amounts of it are found naturally in fruits and vegetables. So things like berries, mushrooms, and oats. And our own bodies even make tiny amounts of xylitol every day as part of normal metabolism. But the xylitol that you find in gum or toothpaste, that's usually made from birchwood or corn. And chemically, it's the same molecule, so whether it's from a natural source or produced industrially, your body treats it the same way. It has a sweet taste, but the key difference is that oral bacteria can't ferment it the same way they ferment sugar. And that's where things get interesting. And that's the second major effect of xylitol. It basically changes the behavior of the cavity-causing bacteria. And if you're getting value out of this video so far, a quick like will really help me know if these deeper dives are useful, and it also helps more people discover them too. Now, so far, we've seen how xylitol helps shorten the acid window after meals. But the second effect, which I just mentioned, is even more fascinating, which is about the bacteria that cause cavities. And one of the main culprits is a bacteria called Streptococcus mutans. It loves sugar, and when it gets sugar, it ferments it, it produces acid, and it creates sticky substances that help cling onto your teeth and build plaque. And that cycle of sugar in, acid out, sticky plaque is what drives decay. And this is where xylitol changes the picture. To bacteria like Streptococcus mutans, xylitol looks like sugar. They take it up, but they can't actually use it for energy. It's the wrong fuel. And think of it like filling a petrol car with diesel. The nozzle fits, the tank fills, but when you actually try to drive it, the engine sputters and stalls. And that's what exactly happens to cavity bacteria with xylitol. Instead of producing their usual burst of acid, they get stuck in a metabolic dead end. And over time, that makes them less efficient at colonizing the mouth, and they become weaker competitors in the plaque community. Now, to be clear, xylitol doesn't sterilize the mouth or wipe out the bacteria completely, and we wouldn't want that either. A healthy mouth has to always have some bacteria in it, but studies consistently show that xylitol shifts the balance towards fewer acid-producing bacteria, lower plaque acidity, and environment where enamel has a better chance to recover. And so far, we've looked at the theory: more saliva, shorter acid windows, and bacteria that can't run on the wrong fuel. But how does this actually translate in the real world? And that's where decades of studies actually give us some answers. And one of the best known examples comes from Finland. In the 1970s and the 80s, schools gave children xylitol gum after meals and then tracked their dental health. And children who chewed xylitol gum regularly significantly had fewer cavities compared to those who didn't. And this wasn't just one study. The school-based research has been repeated and built on over the years, and the results keep pointing in the same direction. Xylitol use is linked to lower cavity rates in children. Another fascinating piece of research looked at how mothers chewing xylitol gum during their baby's early years. Normally, cavity-causing bacteria are passed on from parent to child, often without anyone realizing it. But in those studies, children whose mothers used xylitol gum ended up with lower levels of Streptococcus mutans in their mouths and fewer cavities as they grew up. And that suggests that xylitol will not only help the person chewing it, but could also even reduce the transmission of cavity bacteria to the next generation. Now, like any other area of research, results aren't identical in every study. Some show bigger effects, some smaller, but the overall trend is clear. Groups using xylitol consistently show fewer cavities than those who don't. And if you'd like to explore this yourself, I've linked some of these papers down below in the description. They go into more detail about these school programs and family studies. So what does all of this mean in everyday life? And across studies, the clear signals have come when xylitol has been used regularly, especially after meals or snacks. And in those settings, researchers have found three consistent things. There was a faster recovery of pH after eating, there were fewer acid spikes across the day, and there was lower plaque acidity over time. And that doesn't make xylitol a silver bullet. You still need to brush with fluoride twice a day, cleaning in between your teeth, and have a balanced diet. These are still the foundation. But as an add-on, the evidence suggests that it can tip the balance in favor of enamel. In fact, many of these studies that showed the benefits used simple habits. For example, a piece of gum or a mint containing xylitol right after meals. It wasn't complicated, but repeated small exposures seemed to make a measurable difference. And of course, like anything in health, there are caveats. And the biggest one here is pets. So xylitol is extremely dangerous, as you mentioned, for dogs, even in small amounts. And that causes their blood sugar to crash or even damage their liver. So any gum or mint with xylitol should be kept well out of their reach. And the second caveat is digestion. So xylitol belongs to a group called sugar alcohol. And in large amounts, that can cause bloating or diarrhea. Not everyone is sensitive, but if you are, it's usually about those. And for young children, the main concern isn't the xylitol itself, it's choking, so gum and hard mints should obviously be used with care. And finally, people with medical conditions, things like diabetes, the general research shows that xylitol doesn't cause the same blood sugar spike as regular sugar, but still, it's best to follow your clinician's advice. And if you've seen those headlines about xylitol and heart risk, context really matters. And I've walked through this research in a separate video. I've linked it down here in the description, and thank you for watching.